36 Chambers podcast. What's going on, everybody? This is Alex back with a new episode. I have a lot of things I want to go over today, and I hope everybody's having a good week. I hope everybody had a great weekend. There was a lot going on this past weekend. We had the UFC fight. On Friday, we had Mortal Kombat come out, and I'm going to give my opinion on that abortion of a film. I mean, just a terrible. It makes me happy and grateful that my first Mortal Kombat film was the original one, and that I am not currently, let's say, 6 years old, and this is the first Mortal Kombat film that I'm going to experience, um, because I would, that would be sad compared to what I experienced as a child. The first movie still holds up to be the best, but I'll get more into that later on. Actually, right now, I want to actually just give my condolences to the family of DMX. He passed away recently, and I'm a big DMX fan. He's just one of the most influential rappers of my generation. And, DMX, when it comes to DMX, I mean, the personal struggles he was going through in his life, I just feel that he was one of the rappers that really, how can I put this, that his star burned out earlier than it was supposed to, because when I think about how big he was becoming when I was younger, when he was starring in movies and all of his albums were number one albums. Actually, this might surprise some people, but the majority of his albums are all number one. I think maybe one or two of them didn't top out at number one, but I believe most of them did, which is more than any of these rappers today can say. Because, I mean, DMX came up in an era where he had a lot of competition. I mean, he came up in an era where Nas was popular, Jay Z was very at the height of his fame, Biggie Smalls was alive, Tupac was alive, the Wu Tang. So he had a lot of competition. That means there was a lot of fans that he had to compete for, that were probably going to go listen to somebody else. So that meant that he had to go harder in his music. And to come out at number one with every album you put out, I mean, that says a lot to your talent as a hip hop artist, and not just a hip hop artist, but to your talent as an entertainer. And I mean, he really did have an impact on hip hop as a whole. I I think it's you're going to be hard pressed to find a uh, a hip hop artist today that will say otherwise. I mean, if you find somebody that says that they didn't really think DMX had a lot of influence on the culture, they're probably a dick. But I digress. All right. Now, if you're listening to this and you're a fan of DMX, then you probably know what he was going through. But he was struggling a lot with dependency to specifically crack. And I mean, he went most of his adult life with that struggle, and you could hear it in his music. And most of all, when you went to go listen to him live, almost every single performance that you saw him at, he ended every single one of his performances with a prayer, and almost every single one of them you would see him break down. And throughout the years, you would see his physical image begin to dwindle. You'd begin to see the struggle. He was wearing it on his face. You could see that it was beginning to take its toll on him. And even though his dependency was beginning to take a toll on him, he never really let it keep him down. That's why you would never really see him, how can I put this? You would never really see him in a bad mood whenever you saw him on TV or heard him speak. For instance, I'll give you an example. When he had the rap battle with Snoop Dogg, you could see his energy, his enthusiasm. He was grateful to be there, and you could see that he looked healthier. When you watched the rap battle, you can see that he looked a lot better than previous times that you would see him on the internet, or when you would see him in a video or something. Because in the past, he looked, his physical body, he looked very sucked in. He looked a lot skinnier. He would speak and he wouldn't make sense. He would mumble a lot, and his voice was raspy, so you could tell that it was beginning to take a toll on him. And when he did the rap battle with Snoop Dogg, I mean, you know how much Snoop Dogg actually, he's known to for being a big smoker. So he was able to handle the battle easier than DMX. DMX looked like he was getting tired at some points. But I will say this, one thing I did notice was that DMX was actually performing a lot more during his part of the rap battle. What I mean by that is that he was more animated, he was moving a lot more. He was actually treating it as if he was in front of a crowd, which is what actually showed me that he was probably in a better place physically, because he, even though he was probably running out of breath, it was probably because of him making a bigger effort to perform more. But I mean, it was just really good to see DMX show that type of energy, and um, I I'm happy that I was able to experience his music. I mean, his first album, It's Dark and Hell is Hot. I mean, the Rough Riders anthem off that album was probably his best known song. So DMX, just one of the greatest hip hop artists to ever do it. Much respect to him. Just all out great, and he deserves his head on the Mount Rushmore of hip hop artists. All right. Another thing, speaking of Snoop Dogg, I wanted to go over the how can I put this? I mean, the circus event that was the Triller show for the Jake Paul versus Ben Askren fight. I mean, that thing was straight out of, how can a Judge Dredd movie. It looked like we were in a warehouse, like they were shooting it in a warehouse after the apocalypse, and they just picked up a few lights that were laying around, and they makeshift a ring, and found a few cameras, and they just broadcasted this event. And the the interesting part is, I mean, they got Justin Bieber, Doja Cat. They even got Ice Cube there. They got Too Short there, E40, and that's nice. But it's a boxing event, and I don't understand why there's so many artists at a boxing event. I mean, it almost made it feel like it was a concert, a show, a concert event with boxing in the middle. And it should have been the other way around. I don't, and the announcement, one of the announcers was Oscar de la Hoya, and I'm sure he was there. I'm sure Oscar was there to give more credibility to the event. But when have you heard of this many artists performing at a boxing event? I mean, I've never heard about, 5, 10, different, 10 is exaggerating. I'd say 5 different artists performing at a boxing event. Overall, the fight between Jake Paul and Ben Askren, it lasted 1 round. Jake Paul knocked down Ben Askren. He didn't really seem that hurt. He looked a little wobbled, but it looked like he can go on, and the referee called off the fight. And it made it look like Jake Paul destroyed Ben Askren. And I mean, we're talking about an Olympian MMA fighter here. We're talking about a guy who went undefeated for about 10 years before he retired. And then he retired undefeated before he went to the UFC. Then he got the call to go to the UFC, came out of retirement, and that's when he suffered his first loss to Jorge Masvidal, George Masvidal, which I'll get to his fight in a bit. But what I'm trying to say here is that Askren is not a walk in the park. Jake Paul chose him because Askren is known for his wrestling. That's how he became such a long-lasting champion over at ONE FC and Bellator. He never became a champion in the UFC because Jorge Masvidal ended his career and took his hype. It was Grand Theft hype, but he's a professional fighter. Jake Paul is a YouTuber who just decided to pick up boxing 3 years ago. I I kind of thought that Ben Askren, if given the opportunity, I think he would have still won that fight. I know Jake Paul is hungry, but when it comes to the experience of being in a fight, especially an MMA fight, where you can be taken down to the ground and elbowed and ground and pounded, and I mean, it's not just going to be on the feet. That type of experience gives you a certain type of durability as an overall fighter. So even if Ben Askren would have gone there to fight Jake, his experience would have allowed him to drown Jake Paul, take him into the later rounds, tire him out, keep him up against the ropes, clinch, dirty box a little bit, and wear him out. That should have been the plan. I mean, Ben Askren came out of retirement to fight Jake Paul after having hip surgery. I mean, he had just been out of hip surgery for what, I think 3 months. Got the call from Jake Paul, hey, you want to box for $500,000? I mean, if I would have been out of hip surgery maybe a week after that and I would have got the call, I would have been sure. Let me put my shoes on. I'm on my way, And that that's the thing. That's why Jake Paul is so good at what he does, because he's so great at promoting himself. He's good at choosing these fighters that he knows he's going to be able to build his image off of. One thing I will say about Ben Askren, though, is what we saw when Ben Askren came to the UFC. We saw that he had a natural ability to promote himself. He was really good at building himself up. And during the entire build-up to the Jake Paul versus Ben Askren fight, he promoted the hell out of that fight. Jake Paul barely promoted himself. You could see him on one or two interviews. Ben Askren was everywhere and making sure that everybody was going to watch it. If in his contract he was going to get a percentage of the pay-per-view sales, then I applaud him for just basically promoting the hell out of that fight, because he did that. He was the one who got all those eyeballs. Every time that I would log on to YouTube, that I would open the YouTube app, there was another podcast interview with Ben Askren. He was everywhere, and that's what you're supposed to do. And he was still training. So much respect to Ben Askren. And he said, in the lead up to the fight, he said, if Jake Paul is good, any good, then I'll probably lose to him. And if I lose to him, I'm just going to go back to coaching, wrestling, and living my life. I'm not going to care. And I respect him for that, because that shows a lot of maturity and a lot of a strong self-esteem personality. And he's not attached to his ego, and he's not attached to his thoughts. So I applaud him for that. I think the fight could have gone on longer. Overall, the Triller show was was horrendous. I hope they don't do that again. I'm sure they will do it because I heard it got 1.3 million views. Not views, pay-per-view buys. That's important because I know Jake Paul is trying to get a fight with McGregor, and that shows those type of numbers show McGregor that Jake Paul is worth giving attention to, which I mean, oh my God. I mean, we're living in a time where Jake Paul's brother Logan Paul is about to fight Mayweather. He's about to fight, I believe, in October. He's gonna fight Mayweather, the greatest boxer of all time. And Logan Paul, he lost his last fight. But don't get me wrong here. I'm not holding anything against Logan or Jake Paul for building their image or or giving attention to the sport of boxing. I'm criticizing the entertainment industry for where it's going, and sports are entertainment, movies are entertainment. So in this regard, boxing, it's just for money. And it's interesting that Mayweather would take a fight with Logan Paul simply for the money when he really talks about all the millions he's made. He should be set for the rest of his life. I know he's made more than $1 billion in his boxing career. So it's interesting that he's fighting Logan Paul. Yes, it's going to bring you a lot of attention. Yes, it's going to sell very well. But is it really necessary? Who knows? Only Mayweather knows why he's doing it. And we'll see how it goes. We all wanted to watch McGregor fight Mayweather, but that made more sense. Logan basically on the same boat his brother is. They've barely been boxing for 2-3 years. You know, they have 2-3 professional fights, and Logan is fighting Mayweather. Are we not seeing the big play here? The big money grab, the big cash grab? Yeah, I think this one we're all seeing it. Yeah, I think we are. I think we've been through it enough times to not miss it. And hey, okay, so here we go. Got a little serious there. I'm sorry. Okay, now moving on to Usman versus Masvidal, UFC, Jorge Masvidal. I'm going to say it with my Spanish accent. UFC 261 this past Saturday. It was a full house. The first event since we went with no audience for any sport due to the COVID restrictions. They were lifted in Florida, so it can be a full house. It was 15,000 people in attendance, and it was Masvidal's hometown, or home state, I believe. He lives in Florida, so he had the whole arena was there to support him, and he gets knocked out. Oh man, the first time he's been knocked out in, I believe, like almost 10 years. I mean, he was knocked out at the beginning of his career with the exact same combination from, I believe, Victor Rodriguez, I believe. I may be wrong. I apologize if that's not the name, but if I remember correctly, it's Victor Rodriguez knocked him out with the exact same combination. Look it up. I believe it's the name. And before that, when Jorge Masvidal was street fighting in backyards, Ray knocked him, a fighter which was Kimbo's prodigy, knocked him down with the exact same combination as well. So obviously it's a tendency that Jorge has not adjusted to. He drops his left arm to come over with the right, and when he drops his left arm, that's when the opponent's right comes and it catches him right on the button. It was devastating. I really wanted George, listen to me. I really wanted Jorge to win that fight because Usman is a great fighter, but he is not entertaining like George is. He wouldn't, if If Masvidal would have won that fight, all the future championship fights after that, they would have been so entertaining because the back and forth banter between him and his opponent, it would have been very entertaining. I can only imagine him and Colby Covington going at it. I mean, simply the press conferences for all those fights would have been worth the ticket admission to go see those fights because I mean George is he's charismatic. He has personality. The UFC knows this and that's why they gave him the rematch because Jorge's last fight was Usman. He lost to Usman in 2020 at the beginning of the year and they gave him the rematch because he sells and they need that to promote Usman. After Usman fought Masvidal the first time, then he fought Gilbert Burns, and you could see the difference in sales for each fight. There was significantly more attention. Listen to me, Jesus. There was significantly more attention for the Masvidal fight than there was for the Gilbert Burns fight. And that's the UFC knows that, and they know that if they attach Masvidal to Usman, they're gonna sell more, especially in an arena or an event where it's gonna be a full house. They need to go all out. That's why that event had 3 title fights, and I was so happy to see Rose Namajunas beat Zhang Wei Li. I'm a fan of Zhang Wei Li, but Rose deserves everything she's ever gotten, and she's such a humble fighter. She's such a great fighter. I mean, she is a great fighter. She's not good, she's great. And to see her knock out Zhang Wei Li in the first round with a front kick that Zhang Wei Li never saw coming, it was just I got emotional because if you know me personally, if you've been around me, you know how much I love the UFC, how invested I can be with the UFC. So I know the struggle that Rose went through after she lost her belt, the criticism and the pressure that she went through, and to see her regain her belt, it's a story that can be used in a movie. And when she won it the first time, when she beat Joanna Jędrzejczyk, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I don't think I am. But when she beat Joanna the first time, after Joanna was just bullying her through to the build up to the to the build up of that fight, it was nice to see her knock Joanna out. Like, oh my god, talk about swallowing your words, and then to see her lose the belt to Jessica Andrade on a fluke pile driver. I mean, Jessica picked her up. Jessica was losing the fight. She gets a hold of Rose, picks her up, slams her on her head, wins the fight. But the whole time prior to that, she was losing the fight hands down. Rose was just too much for her. And, she catches her, flips her on her head, and slams her. And Rose loses the belt. And she was very humble in defeat. She even said that it was a big pressure off her shoulders because having the belt is very stressful. And you know, if if she needed to lose that belt in order to regain her composure as not just a fighter but a person and regain that drive to become champion again, if she needed that, then more power to her because I mean that drive that she regained was just amazing. I can go on all day about Rose. And then now moving on to Valentina. Valentina beating Jessica Andrade. Everybody knew she was going to do that. That was a no-brainer. Valentina's called the bullet for a reason. I mean, the only other fighter we can all see Valentina fighting is Amanda Nunes. The third time they fought 2 times before. So, yeah. I believe that's gonna have to be the next fight. Hopefully, the UFC can make it, because Valentina and Amanda, these are fighters that own divisions. No other women fighters in their division even come close to the fight potential that they have, to the abilities that they have. And it's pretty straightforward. I mean, I knew she was going to beat Jessica, and she even beat Jessica at her own game. Everybody thought Jessica was going to take her down and beat her on the ground, maybe submit her. Nope. Valentina took her down like 10 times in the first round. She was pissed. She was making a point. She was like, "Oh, how dare you guys think that just because I was taken down one time in my last fight, that you guys were going to think that Jessica was going to do something?" And it looked like she was fighting pissed off. And you know what? You know what? You're right. You're right, Valentina. We're sorry. On behalf of all the fans that maybe doubted you, we're sorry. I never doubted you. I'm just speaking on behalf of them. So don't say anything to me. I'm just speaking on behalf of them. They don't want to talk. So, I apologize for them. Now, moving on to Chris Weidman. I mean, this event was historic. I mean, we start off the main card with Chris Weidman cracking his leg. And now, for those of you who don't know who Chris Weidman is, he was once the middleweight champion of the world, and he beat Anderson Silva and took his belt. And at that time, when he beat Anderson Silva was known as the greatest fighter, period. Not in history, not at the time, not ever, period. Everybody thought Anderson Silva was just going to run through him like he ran through everybody else. And for those of you who don't know, the way Anderson Silva fights, he exudes such confidence that there's times where he jokes around during the fight. He showboats a lot and he mocks the fighter. And there was a point where Weidman was throwing a combination at Silva. It doesn't reach Silva, so Silva pretends. I may be wrong actually, now that I'm thinking about it. I think it grazed Silva. It didn't hurt him, so Silva plays it off and acts as if he was wobbled a little bit. He begins to mock Weidman a little bit, like he's done with every single fighter he's defeated in the past. But this time, Chris Weidman threw another combination, and it actually caught him and it actually caught Silva as he was mocking Chris Weidman. Talk about karma, right? And he knocks out Anderson Silva. Chris Weidman knocks out Anderson Silva for the first time in years. I can't even recall right now if Anderson Silva had ever been dropped like that. And he took Anderson Silva's belt. He became the champion of the world, which was, everybody thought it was just because Anderson Silva was showboating. Oh, I got a plane passing by. You hear the plane? So, obviously, they had to do the rematch. And in the rematch, lo and behold, in the second round, was it the second round? I think it was. There's just so many fights in my mind. Some of them get tangled up. In the second round, or if it was the first, whatever. In the second fight, though, Anderson Silva throws a leg kick and Chris Weidman checks it. That means he blocks it by turning his leg, I believe, at a 45-degree angle, which gives Anderson Silva the bone of Chris's shin, and it cracks his leg. It cracks Anderson Silva's leg. It literally cracks it in half. Sorry if you hear my water bottle here. And it cracks his leg. Anderson Silva literally shatters his leg. It looks unbearable when you watch it. So, I bring that up because Chris Weidman on Saturday cracked his leg the exact same way. Talk about karma. I guarantee you Anderson Silva has a picture of Chris Weidman in his freezer playing some Brazilian voodoo, some uh, MMA amarre, like I learned recently. Anderson Silva's got MMA amarre on Chris Weidman because he cracked. It was the exact same thing. It was the exact same thing. It's crazy. And watching it. Oh, but see, the thing is that when when Chris Weidman cracked his leg fighting Uriah Hall this weekend, Uriah Hall checks it. He blocks it just like Chris Weidman did to Anderson. Uh, but when Anderson cracked his leg, he immediately felt it and he dropped to the ground. Chris Weidman did not notice. He didn't feel it. So he actually stepped on his cracked leg. And that looked terrible. Yeah, that was bad. I mean, poor Chris Weidman. He was trying to come back. He had lost his belt to Luke Rockhold, and he was trying to make a comeback. Got knocked out a few times, and to have this happen to him, man, I feel so bad for him. I mean, these fighters, they work so hard, you know, for 15 to 25-minute fights in a cage, and to have your career stonewalled by a broken leg like that. I mean, my heart goes out to him. I hope he recovers. You know, everybody respects you, Chris. You're a great champion. And you know what? At least you weren't a part of the Mortal Kombat movie. You know, I you know what? That actually looked like you probably would have been in a Mortal Kombat movie the way you broke your leg. Because man, moving on to the Mortal Kombat fight, Moving on to the new Mortal Kombat movie, it's sad. I mean, it's sad that the first ever Mortal Kombat in 1995, when that one came out, and if I'm wrong about the year, whatever, but that one looked a lot better. The choreography, the the set makeup, everything. I mean, the actors, they portrayed the roles a lot better. I mean, Liu Kang in this fight, he looks like a child. I mean, that's not Liu Kang. No, I refuse to believe that that was Liu Kang. I don't know why they called him Liu Kang, but that wasn't Liu Kang. And Raiden, that wasn't Raiden. Raiden's supposed to have white hair, and he's not bald. And Raiden takes his hat off every now and then. I don't know why he had his hat on the whole time. You know, and why were his eyes lightning the whole time? No. It was just too much. I didn't need Scorpion's nephew or great grandnephew or grandson or adopted son from three wives or his brother's son, whatever that kid was. I didn't need him for the storyline. You could have given me the story between Sub Zero and Scorpion for the entire movie, and I would have been fine. You didn't even have to give me the tournament, which there wasn't a tournament. And in Mortal Kombat is based off the tournament, and there wasn't a tournament. There was a few fights, but I mean, you could have just stuck with the Sub Zero versus Scorpion plotline. I would have been okay with that. Those two actors were actually not bad. The outfits, they were decent. The choreography between those two fights, those were good. I'll give you props for that. The first 10 minutes that made it look like a normal movie without all the CGI and without all the um, uh, cringe dialogue. When it was them speaking Japanese and I was reading the subtitles, that was good. The way Sub Zero froze Scorpion's family, that was interesting. That was crazy. That looks sad. If I would have found my family like that, boy, Sub Zero, you got something else coming, buddy. And Scorpion's reaction. I could have he could have given me a little more emotion, you know? You found your family frozen like that. Come on, work it for me. Give me a little more, buddy. But I can understand, sometimes some people the way they react, they just don't have words. So okay, I could see that. But he gave me the emotions in the fight, and he really gave it to Sub-Zero. And I mean, I'm a huge Scorpion fan, so I'm happy he won at the end. But that movie was just terrible. It's an abomination. It's not Mortal Kombat. I'm just gonna say, I'm just gonna try to forget it. I'm just gonna move on with my life. I think that one thing that they could have done, they could have used the Liu Kang from the '95 film, because that guy still looks the same. He doesn't age. I mean, have you seen him lately? I forgot his name, but he doesn't age. I think Raiden was still around. They could have used all the same people. Oh my god, and I forgot. They didn't have Johnny Cage in this movie. Why? Why did you give me Scorpion's grand great son from his third, second wife or his daughter? Whatever he was. I don't know who that guy was. It looked like he just walked onto the Mortal Kombat set while they were filming the movie, and they were just like, hey, it looked like he was probably a stunt man who they said, hey, the other guy didn't come in. Johnny Cage's character didn't come in. Do you want to fill in for him? And then they just had to rewrite the entire story around this guy. That's how much I didn't care about. That's how irrelevant this guy was. And to make him an MMA fighter. Look, he's making me stutter. To make him an MMA fighter, I mean, can you be more corny? I know I'm rambling here, and I'm if you're still listening, thank you. I appreciate it. Hopefully, I've made some sense if I wasn't speaking too fast. But yeah, that's all I've wanted to go over. Mortal Kombat was terrible. They should have had Johnny Cage in there. They should have just brought back everybody from the first movie, and I would have been happy. But okay, I want to thank you guys for listening. Jorge Masvidal, I'm sorry that you got knocked out like that. I'm sorry, buddy. We still love you. Ben, we still love you. Snoop Dogg, I don't know what you're doing with Triller, but hey, buddy, if you're making money, go ahead. More power to you. And once again, rest in peace to DMX. We're gonna miss you, buddy. Thank you for all the great music, and thank you for your influence on hip hop. And just you can rest now, buddy. All right, thanks, guys. That's gonna be it for today. Have a good day, guys.